That's the nothing personal word of the day. It's Friday, thankfully, July 19th, 2024. PAB stands for Post All-Star Break. Notice I won't say the second half of the season starts tonight because we're past the halfway mark. 162 divided by 2 is 81. I pushed for not calling it first half, second half. Nope. That's what we want to call it. I'm not sure why. That'd be funny in a basketball game if somewhere in the third quarter, all of a sudden they had halftime and said, all right, second half. It's only 18 minutes of basketball coming up, but that's the second half. A lot of stories that we're going to follow. A lot of stories, a lot of stuff going on today. Some of you may have watched the RNC. We may talk about that. A lot of stuff going on with Biden. A lot of stuff going on with OBJ, the A's, the Rays. But I'm excited about the second half. Can we start with the first story? Are you in the National League? Are you a National League team? It's a dream come true. Sit around talking about expanded wild cards, keeping teams in the race longer. All the announcements around baseball have been positive. Great PR. Notwithstanding A's, Rays, let's talk about competitive balance. Let's not talk about suspensions or steroids or cholera. Let's talk about teams, attendance, games that matter in September, meaningful games late into the season. If you're in Chicago, north side only. How about Frisco, not Oakland? What about Great American Ballpark? Could be that you're a Skenes guy and you're in Pittsburgh. It's possible that you believe in Preller. It's not that hard to defend your pennant-winning team, the reigning National League champion, in it. Stephen Cohen has a dream. His dream is that he's going to win a World Series, in it. St. Louis Cardinals getting ready to fire Marmol. I'm getting ready to go to St. Louis on Monday. Who's joining me? You'll be able to watch the show. I had a whole segment ready to go, how much they stink, in it. Braves. So much money they make. They're a printing press in Atlanta. Much of it through their development. They're a publicly owned company. Did you see, Coca, that the Packers are the only publicly owned NFL team? The extrapolation that goes on when the Packers release their numbers, and then people assume by multiplying that by 30 or 32, I'm blanking again. I still get confused. I don't know why that happens to me. I think there's 30 NBA, 30 MLB, 32 NFL, and 32 NHL. Or is it 30 NHL and 32 NBA and 32 NFL? Whatever. The Packers release their numbers. They show what their revenue is national, that split between all the teams. So you multiply that. Then it takes their local revenue. Hey, look, it's going to be a $20 billion business. Look at how much money they're making because they release $60 million of operating income. The Braves have to do the same thing through Liberty. Liberty Bibberty. But remember, underneath is all the stuff that is not subject to revenue sharing. Underneath are all of the dollars that are made when you go to Truist Park, but don't go in Truist Park. When the wild card was invented, too much noise and anger by Bud Selig. Are you liking it now in all those cities? It's going to be a fight to the finish. That's what baseball wants. Do you remember the year, Coca? What year did we have 2 or 3 games going on at the same time? We weren't involved. Colorado, I believe, clinched a playoff spot on the final game of the season. And that was the beginning of the idea that every game at the end would be played at the same time. It's so brilliant because we would complain. We would say, it's no fair because if we lose our game, then the opponent could pitch their shortstop. What would be the difference if the second game doesn't matter anymore? MLB changed it, so now every game's at the same time. And what they want is for the NL wild card to go to the final weekend and then to the final Sunday. It's going to happen. The other story I'm watching is what's going on in the AL East. I want to give a shout out to Will Middlebrooks, please. Work with him at CBS Sports. He's a former player. He was so good. We tried to trade for him every year. He was untouchable. Our baseball people loved him. Ended up getting hurt. Now he has a great media career. He calls games on NESN as well, pre and post. The Red Sox are 4.5 out in a season where people were calling for, I guess we're moving on from Alex Cora. I guess John Henry is the single worst owner ever. Doesn't care. Wants to buy soccer teams and the PGA and the Penguins. You're 4.5 out with 4 rings. You feeling good? The story that I want to talk about is Yankees, Orioles, Red Sox. A 3-way race. And we're ignoring the 500 Tampa Bay Rays. Tampa already won the year. We'll talk about that later. They have a stadium. Finally. AL West. My friends in Seattle, I have a message for you. I'm going to say it softly, and I'm going to say it on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Panic. I always tell people, don't panic till I tell you. When there's turbulence on an airplane, or when something's going wrong in a business, or people are getting upset about something, I was just, Coca, this is a funny thing that happened last night. My kids are with me this weekend. And my daughter was recounting a story that when they were young, I had a very simple rule. When they were scared about something, I would say, if I'm willing to do this, then it's okay for you to do it. Because I value my life more than anybody else's, including yours. It doesn't make me Father of the Year, but the point was to teach them. When we went skydiving and they were scared, I said, I'm jumping out of the plane. If I'm willing to jump out, don't worry, it's safe. You can too. When we would take a small plane somewhere, or when we were doing something else, eating a kind of food, I always said the same thing. If I'm willing to eat it, you should eat it. Turns out, as my daughter got older, and she's now in her 20s, she said that lesson actually mattered, because I think about that. And my North Star is not WWJD. It's D, 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 T. Did Dad do that? Well, it's the same thing with panic. The Mariners were in great shape. They're my pick to win the World Series. Spoiler alert, I'm not changing it. But it is time to panic, because the object in the rearview mirror is way closer than it appears. The Houston Astros are 1 game back heading into the Post All-Star Break period. The Mariners will still make the playoffs. It is likely that the Astros will win their division again. I love the fact that Houston is 3.5 back of the wild card and 1 behind the division. Right now, the Yankees, Minnesota, and Boston are the wild cards in the American League. The loser of the Houston-Seattle battle, I still expect to make the playoffs. But the panic is that if the Mariners do not add a bat in this deadline before July 30th to complement their overwhelmingly outstanding pitching staff, the team may fall apart. The clubhouse may be lost. Paul Skenes may run for president. That's my new thought. If Biden drops out, if Trump decides that he's too tired or Hulk Hogan wants to take over, or maybe Eric. I wonder whether Paul Skenes could get more of the popular vote today than any of them. People love him in Pittsburgh. Now people saw him on the national stage this week at the All-Star game. Paul Skenes, the man with 11 starts, has bet his way. Let me say that better, Coca. 4869. Paul Skenes for Cy Young has been bet to the point where he now has the third shortest odds to win the Cy Young. Chris Sale, the favorite, Zach Wheeler on his toes, and then Skenes. It is impossible for Skenes to win the Cy Young. And the reason I say that is I don't believe that he will have the bulk required to win it. If the Pirates stay in the race, which they are, and they continue to start him every 5 days, which they won't, then I'll be wrong. But if you think the Pirates are not going to monitor his innings, which I don't agree with, if you think that they're not going to skip a start or give him an extra rest day, I think you're not really inside the mind of Cherington and Nutting. The reason I don't agree with it is, as we stand today, getting ready for PAB, the Pittsburgh Pirates are 1.5 games out of a playoff spot. The problem is they have to climb over 3 teams, currently San Diego, Arizona, and the Mets. It's really hard to climb over teams. The Pirates have won 4 in a row. They're back to 500, which is where you need to start to believe that you have one hot streak away from solidifying a playoff position. But what I think Nutting's really going to do is take advantage of the lagging indicator and impact of a successful season. There'll be more season ticket holders next year, more revenue next year. There'll be more, hopefully, understanding of where the local TV revenue is going. If there were ever a time to increase the payroll, it would be next year if you're the Pirates. Skenes will have a year under his belt. They'll have a full year of Skenes. He will have no innings limitation. So if I am running the Pirates, I am focused on next year, but I have to pretend I'm focused on this year. But I'm not going to in any way trade the farm in order to add to this team. We'll find out. But you'll all be angry. People will cry for how angry they are that small market teams do this. On the other hand, Baltimore, Cleveland, Milwaukee, are you looking at the standings? Small market teams are having more than a moment. They're in their full element. Over the next 11 days, we're going to learn a lot about what each team is not speculated to do. Always my favorite part of the deadline is all of the people in the media, all of the fans out there. I want my team to do this. I want my team to do that. Everybody's all in on Crochet. When are the Marlins going to trade Jazz? You don't need to speculate. We are 11 days away from knowing. There's one deadline, July 30th. There's no August deadline. This is it. 11 days, 6 p.m. I think we may do a show at 6 p.m. on the trade deadline, Coca. Like a live show. I think we should do that. To take receipts about who's doing what. It will be very telling. PAB. Here we go. What time's the first game today? When can I start watching baseball? I would assume they'll have no day games coming out of the break on a Friday. No, there is the Cubs, obviously. 1 day game. Cubs. Nothing personal pick of the day. We are 93 and 102. We are so hot. Did I just jinx myself? All right, we're going to do an official read here. Get ready. Shout out to DraftKings. Thank you for your support of Nothing Personal and the Nothing Personal pick of the day. So here is for Juju, the great social media leader for Metalark. 10, 80, 69. Nothing Personal pick of the day, presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned because you'll hear more about DraftKings and all it has to offer throughout the show. DraftKings, The crown is yours. For today's pick, as we start the second half of the Major League Baseball season, the Cincinnati Reds are playing the Washington Nationals. And those who have followed Nothing Personal know that when Patrick Corbin is pitching, we pick against the Nationals. You're 9-3 if you've done it over Corbin's 12 starts that have been our picks. Reds minus 118 over the Nats. In addition, we are giving you a pick for Saturday presented by DraftKings. Framber Valdez and the Astros have a 3-game series against the Mariners. The Houston Astros could end the weekend in first place in the division where they were double-digit deficit. Valdez has pitched like the ace that he is. The Mariners have had issues hitting. Good pitching beats bad hitting every day. Good pitching beats good hitting most days. Valdez and the Astros over the Mariners on Saturday. Reds over the Nats on Friday. Astros over the Mariners on Saturday. Those are your Nothing Personal picks of the day presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Do you have to do that again? You okay with that, Coca? All right. Everyone who's been following the Oakland A's saga, get ready. The next part of the show will be devoted to what happened yesterday prior to everyone staying up past midnight watching speeches. There was a commission meeting, a council meeting, a public meeting, a hugely important sort of meeting where the Oakland A's, we have to actually change that. We have a new name for the Oakland A's, not the Sacramento A's, not the A's. We're going the Aths. Really slips off the tongue, doesn't it? Of course, if you're not laughing, then you didn't look at the schedule release that MLB did yesterday. I'm laughing because everybody's schedule, it's the Ath. That's what it says in everybody's schedule release when they're playing the Athletics, the A's. Somehow, someone decided to do ATH. Keeps reminding me of those people on, what are those things called when you're supposed to wear a helmet or you could die? The four-wheeler things. I can't believe I can't think of it, Coca. The ATVs, ATHs, we're going to call them the Aths. So the Aths had a big, this is going to be good. The Aths had a big day yesterday. But there seems to be a bit of confusion, so I want to explain what took place. When you try to get public funding and you try to pay no property tax on a new ballpark because you want the public to own the land in the ballpark, you want to get all the revenue from that ballpark, and you want to commingle public money with your money, you have to have hearings. You have to get votes. The Las Vegas Stadium Authority met with the Athletics, bunch of politicians. They had a bunch of people speaking, Sandy Dean and others. And about 3 minutes before the meeting started, finally, I got to read a 90-page agreement. The development agreement, which is the agreement that is used between the public and the team, that gives the rules about how the ballpark will be financed, paid for, built. There's construction agreements. There's operating agreements. There's non-relocation agreements, community benefits agreements. There's all sorts of things that you need to agree on, all sorts of agreements that need to be passed by a vote, which did not happen yesterday. What was posted to be made public yesterday was this development agreement, and people in the media and fans started reading it and parsing it out, trying to follow the legalese of this section needs to be read in conjunction with that section. I used to make flowcharts when I would read agreements, whether it was law school or after law school or doing our stadium. Behind me on my set here are all of the stadium agreements for Marlins Park. The reason why flowcharts are needed, it's to help me read each section, because you're supposed to read an agreement from start to finish, but then you read the agreement according to the way the agreement is written, where there are other sections referenced within other sections. So you'll be in section 3.2, and it will say, section 3.2 deals with private financing. But section 14.1, but heretofore, section 3.1 A through F are related as second cousins. So when you read these agreements, you have to keep going back and forth, is the point, from one section to another section, because it gives you a frame of reference and it helps you understand really what's happening. It's a big reason why Shakespeare was right. It is very complicated to read these agreements. I want to try to distill down a couple points for you. Number one, the development agreement does not need to and will not specifically ever say where the Oakland A's contribution is coming from. It will give you the macro numbers. There will be $850 million of equity put in by the A's. There'll be $300 million of debt taken by the A's for $1.15 million total. The public will give up to $380, but more likely $350. When you add up 1.15 and 0.35, you get to 1.5. 1.5 is what they've said is the budget to build this stadium on 9 acres. The development agreement goes through where the stadium is going to be built, the exact part of the Bally's parcel. The development agreement makes very clear that the public will not pay for environmental remediation. They will not pay for cost overruns. The A's admitted themselves, we don't know what the price is going to be. It's the most honest thing they've said. Except you can make the price whatever you want. Do you know how to build $1.5 billion stadium? You tell the contractor and you tell the architect that there's going to be a guaranteed maximum price. A guaranteed maximum price is when you tell someone, I've got $1.5 billion for you. When you go over $1.5 billion, I ain't giving it to you. Guess what happens next? The architect and the contractor go to the team and say, thank you. We appreciate that you have $1.5 billion. Ta-da! This is the stadium we can get you for $1.5 billion. And then you say, well, wait a minute. That doesn't look like the renderings. And then everyone laughs. We're not going to give you nice furniture in your offices because your FF&E budget, we're going to cut from there. When you do a building in what's called a design build, when you do a building with a GMP, you cannot make any promises to your sales department. You can't make any promises to baseball. You can't make any promises to editorial boards of newspapers because you don't know squat. And the reason I say it so forcefully is I can make sure, and they will make sure, the building doesn't cost more than 1.5, but it comes at the expense of items in the building. It could end up smaller. It could end up less nice. The entire outfield wall that's windows may only be partially windows. There may be less climatization. Who knows? As far as the public is concerned, their spending is capped at the bond issuance, whether it's 300, 350, 380, not to be more than 380. What the public needs to do is protect itself against TEPR. It's the TP. The TEPR protection is making sure that you don't have a half-built white elephant in your city. There are provisions all over this development agreement that guarantee there won't be a half-built stadium, but there is nothing written anywhere that it will be the type of stadium that you're all expecting in Vegas, if it even happens. There are plenty of unwinding provisions without penalties. There are plenty of instances where a building does not get built. It's all there in the 90 pages. For all of you wondering why they didn't delineate specifically the 850 in equity, why they admitted the 300 in debt is not quite done, I have no idea. Let me explain what the 300 in debt is, please. That's when you go to a bank, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, you try to build a syndicate of banks. You get a facility where you borrow at LIBOR plus 250. That's an interest rate. Let's say 5%, 6%, 3%. Doesn't matter for us. It matters to the team because they calculate, given what they've borrowed, how much they have to pay back every year. And that goes into their operating budget when they're calculating how high their payroll can be. You assume attendance, you assume ticket price, you assume corporate sponsor support, but you don't have a payroll yet, but the amount of debt service you have is fixed. It's like your mortgage payment. When you borrow $300 million from a bank, you know what your annual payments are. The problem is they don't have the $300 million yet. And they've said, no problem, we're close. It's going to happen. We're in good shape. Sandy Dean specifically said to the commission, we're in good shape with the financing. It's something we've been working on for a long time. Of course, that's funny to me because you cannot agree and sign a document. Notice the development agreement was not signed. It is irresponsible for a team president to allow an owner to ever sign a document, although I'm the one who signed all the stadium agreements on behalf of Team Co. and Stadco, etc. But you're not going to sign a mortgage if you have no way of paying it, because then you lose your house. And then you're in 2008. A team is not going to sign a development agreement until it's got all the money that it needs. What about the 850 in equity? What they said is they're going to raise it. They're going to sell shares of the team. Here's a question I have for you. If John Fisher had to write an $850 million check, could he? Yes, their family could. If you think that John Fisher and his family are putting $850 million into the stadium by themselves, then I've got a bridge to sell you in New York. 21 of them if you want. If you think that someone's going to buy the A's at a percentage, 10% limited partner, a 20% limited partner, and the money that's being put in will all be put into the stadium, I've got more bridges to sell you. When a majority owner sells shares, they either want to pay down debt or they want to take money off the table for themselves. If you sell a percentage of your team to raise money for a new stadium, what's the valuation of the team? Are you doing a post-new stadium valuation that's a success? Are you doing a post-new stadium valuation that doesn't work? Are you doing a pre-new stadium valuation, in which case the A's are not worth, in theory, what John Fisher wants them to be worth? The point is there's so many things to negotiate when you sell shares to your team, and there's so much uncertainty with the A's that to assume that they're going to get limited partners right now and use those proceeds as part of the money of their $850 million in equity that they're responsible to give, then you are not versed in business. So many questions need to be answered before this deal is done. There is a 90-page development agreement. Did you read about the PSLs? I bet you didn't know about that. When we did our finances with baseball, our financial projections with the new Marlins Park, we once talked to baseball about doing PSLs in Miami, and they said, no one comes to your games. You think that people are going to give you money up front for the right to buy a season ticket? You can't get them to buy season tickets without having to give you money to use. PSLs, which is what the Raiders did partially to finance their building, Football is quite different, as you know. What that means is that you pay money to a team for the right to pay money for that seat. You own that seat, if you will. Oakland was smart enough through Sandy Dean to say we haven't made a decision on PSLs. Smart enough to say that we don't know if we're going to do it. Well, I don't need to make it a wait to see. There will be no PSLs for a Vegas ballpark. I promise you that. There is no one in Vegas who will do it. The last thing I want to cover is a big topic, and I don't need to take a lot of time, but there's a lot of confusion on the Intergoogle. A lot of people are saying that the commissioner is involved in some sort of nefarious activity because there's a gag order on people in Oakland who would like to potentially buy the A's to keep them in Oakland. And that they were told that if they talk, they will not be considered as potential owners of a team. People are calling for the end of the antitrust exemption. People are calling Rob Manfred the worst. Can you believe he's curtailing our right to free speech? Pay attention. It's been a rule within baseball, an unwritten rule for decades. Do you want to know the fastest? Damn it, Coca. 12/29/69. If you want to know the fastest way to not be approved as an owner, go public with the fact that you want to buy a team or that you're trying to buy a team. The first thing I was ever told by Bud Selig when I met him in the capacity of, hey, trying to buy the Expos, first thing he said was, you sure? The second thing he said was, you better not say anything publicly. It was a good lesson. There was a violator of that. Do you know who that was? Mark Cuban. He went public that he wanted to buy a baseball team. Does he own a baseball team right now? No. Wouldn't never get 23 votes. There is nothing wrong with what happened with people being told in Oakland, keep your mouth closed. Totally normal. That is the best way to do it. Take a look on the internet over the past years with people who've been super public about expansion, super public about wanting to be an owner, wanting to buy a team. Does that work well? No, it does not. We will have a lot more on the Oakland A's stadium situation because there is a lot more to still happen. Just because you saw a 90-page agreement does not mean that's the agreement that will be signed or the agreement that will be approved. There were no approvals done at yesterday's meeting. It's a story that we will always be on top of. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, I've got a movie to review, and then I want to congratulate the Tampa Bay Rays. The Tampa Rays. I want to congratulate after the break the St. Petersburg Bay Rays, Devil. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Nothing Personal. It's the last show of the week. What a week it's been. Thank you, Coca. Thank you, Sarah. What a week. Thank you to Metalark, DraftKings. Monday, I will be live, 8 a.m. Eastern, from St. Louis. You'll recognize the different background. There may be pillows and lamps. DavidSamsonPodcast.com, where you can get information on the St. Louis show. You can find merchandise for Nothing Personal. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being with us every step of the way. We are where we are because of you. Watch a movie every day. Keep sending me movie suggestions, but I am currently busy. This whole weekend, I know I'm in a rabbit hole. Yesterday, I watched a documentary called Faye. It's about Faye Dunaway. Now I have to watch Bonnie and Clyde. I have to watch The Yards. I'm going to watch them this weekend. I'll review them next week. Faye is a documentary about Faye Dunaway's life. I must say that I knew nothing about it. People may remember her because she and Warren Beatty, Faye Dunaway and Beatty, La La Land, Moonlight, criminy. Remember that whole Oscar thing that happened? How mortifying that was when they called out Best Picture? Anyway, watch the documentary. It's actually outstanding. It's called Faye. But now I want to watch all of Faye Dunaway movies, which means you're going to hear about them. I want to be serious and congratulate the Tampa Bay Rays. I do. I'm excited for them. Yesterday, the St. Petersburg City Council voted 5-3. You're getting a new ballpark. Stuart Sternberg is not moving the Rays to Jersey. Stuart Sternberg is not moving the Rays to Montreal. Stuart Sternberg is not moving the Rays to Tampa. Stuart Sternberg is moving the A's next door. There's only one thing better than the Trop and its location. And that's a new, smaller ballpark at its location. I'm not yucking on their yum. It's been the longest struggle. I can feel it. 20 years they've been talking about a new ballpark somewhere in the Tampa area. I enjoyed very much Stuart Sternberg's quote right before the council voted. He said, "I've been at this personally now for 20 years plus. It was always my direct intention to keep the team in Tampa Bay." Okay. That's not exactly accurate, but I love these trying to feel the love again. He's trying to let everyone know that, hey, it was just leverage. I never wanted to move to the Northeast. I never wanted to do a split city. Do you remember the quote when he said, "There's no other way to do this? Without splitting our team with Montreal, there is no way to keep the team in Tampa long term." We all have to say stuff that we don't mean or believe as we're trying to get public financing. We all have to play the game where there's ups and downs. It's a roller coaster of emotions. It's been that way for that whole area. It's a huge development that was agreed to. It's going to be a $1.3 billion ballpark, which is just incredible to me. It is incredible how much public money is being put in. It's incredible how much the Rays are putting in. $700 million into this project. Not a lot of talk about how they're going to realize a return on that investment. But I've got a hint for you. It involves monetizing the mixed-use development. It involves revenue streams that will allow them to keep getting revenue sharing in their new ballpark. Stuart Sternberg is one of the smartest businessmen you'll ever meet. His partners, his executives, baseball and business, they're all really smart. There is no chance that they are putting that amount of money into a new ballpark in St. Petersburg because they think that a team in St. Petersburg is going to be better than a team in Little Havana. What they do have and what they did get and what was voted for is the right to monetize things that will be able to be monetized, that will provide a rate of return, a return on investment, or ROI as it's referred to. I don't in any way disagree with what St. Petersburg did to rehabilitate that area, to make it a destination or attempt to. It's an 85-acre site to take 65 of the 86 acres, 85, 86, and use it for homes and office space, commercial, retail, hotel, outdoor public space. I'm in for all of it. But remember, when we said that stadiums are real estate deals, that's what the Inter Miami deal is in Miami. I don't see that ballpark being built anytime soon. That is what teams need now to compete. It's why Steve Cohen wants a casino. He doesn't want chop shops. Nobody goes to the Trop because there's nothing to do at the Trop. If you give people things to do and have them live there, the thought is they'll go to games. It's not like Stuart Sternberg can say we'll be competitive. That's why we need a new ballpark. The Rays are always competitive. That's how good they are. So really what it is we'll be able to keep more players? No. You think that Tampa's payroll is going to go up in this new ballpark? It's not. But the good news is for baseball, kick the can. Move on. No more do we have to think about Tampa. We can get Oakland settled and then get into some serious expansion talk. That's where this ends. Expansion, realignment. They needed Oakland and Tampa to be settled. They're not going to worry about the new crop of teams that needs to be settled. Milwaukee, Arizona, there's progress both places. White Sox. By the time everything gets settled, it's time for the new set of teams to try to get things settled. Do people not realize there's no clear-cut end to the new stadium game? Everybody's looking to renovate or get a new stadium. Just not at once, but it's every year. I do want to say congratulations. It really is big. Do you remember what he said about Montreal? Coca is reminding me of all these comments that he said about Montreal. It's unbelievable. It was December of 20, not that long ago. Montreal is the only option in my mind. We're getting toward 2028. You can't snap your fingers and just have the stadium show up. It's getting trickier and trickier. Fortunately, we've got a strong group of people who work for us, and we've got a very motivated group of people in Montreal who want us. And I think we have a plan that makes sense. Well, they do have a plan. They're staying in St. Petersburg. Not too shabby. I spent time last night watching the RNC. I found it interesting that they went from Hulk Hogan to Reverend Graham. It says a lot about the RNC, Republicans, MAGA Republicans. You don't know where I stand. You may think you do. But here's what I was watching. I was watching a convention, which, of course, all these conventions are preaching to the choir. The love that you feel in a room, it's like when you are the boss and you give a speech and people come up to you and say, wow, what a great speech. Way to go. I want to hear from the people who don't love me. I want to hear criticisms. I want to hear real polling. I don't want the sycophants. That's what conventions are, though. The Republican Party is so firmly in Donald Trump's grasp. The Republican Party is so firmly in his grasp. It's amazing to me. He gave a speech of over 90 minutes. What an opportunity. The Democratic Party's in shambles. The infighting going on between donors, candidates, Congress people, trying so hard to get rid of Biden. The Republican Party had an opportunity last night. They had an opportunity to be a party of a platform. Trump tried to give you the platform, no doubt about that. And that is, he said some key words that people love to hear. Hulk Hogan, did you hear his speech? Real Americans in this room wanted to make sure that it was clear that if you're not that color, you're not a real American. The sad part is the number of people who believe it. The Democrats were watching last night saying, I hope that Trump is not too normal. I hope that he's not too unifying. We're going to need him to be a little off the rails. It's our only hope. I think they got what they wanted. He started off great. It's hard not to have sympathy for someone who almost lost their life. It's hard not to believe there's going to be a change in anybody's life who has a bullet whiz by their ear. Stop making fun of the bandage. Stop making fun of anything. He almost died. Was it a performance to have grandchildren on the lap, to have a granddaughter speak? Everything in politics is a performance. Everything in business is a performance, for crying out loud. Don't criticize the performance. Criticize the performer. Their job is to perform. Your job is to decide whether you are swayed by the performance of the performer. A lot of people were ready to be swayed last night. 90 minutes later, less so. But unfortunately, on the other side, we've got a situation where Joe Biden is likely going to step down from his reelection bid, leaving an open convention where it may not be Kamala Harris. We have no idea who's going to be on the ticket on the Democrat side. It's hard to beat an opponent that you can't identify. Trump and Vance have no idea who they're running against. The Democrats are in such shambles, they can't figure out what to do because it's possible that Joe Biden's the only one who won't step down. It's possible that he's the only one who doesn't realize he has no choice but to step down. I want him to get healthier, obviously. You don't want anyone to die. You don't want anyone to have COVID. You don't want anyone to be shamed, made fun of. It's a downright embarrassment what's happening. I always go back to my poem, Coca, to an athlete dying young. Dying young has a thing that it does. It freezes you. No one watches you age. No one watches you stumble. No one watches you look bad or try to hang on or get Botox or dye your hair or trip on stairs. People freeze you the way you freeze an actor in a movie, and then you see him 20 years later at the reunion or 40 years later. Without that, would there be TikTok? Joe Biden has been an unbelievable public servant. I don't care if you agree or disagree with him. I don't disagree with what Joe Biden does for the most part. But to respect someone who's willing to serve, I haven't exactly run for public office, Board of Education, none of it. And now we're letting his age and his frailty completely change his legacy. Don't penalize someone for trying, for wanting to serve you. How about just saying thank you for your service? Like what you should say to all veterans who you may walk by if they're homeless or look down on if they came back from Vietnam. Disgraceful. Just thank you. You may not agree with the platform. You may not agree with 20 issues. But the vitriol, the hatred, I don't get it. The reason why Biden's in trouble has nothing to do with George Clooney. I want to be very clear. Joe Biden does not care what George Clooney, Barbara Streisand, or anyone else who makes a living performing as other people. Joe Biden's looking at polling. Joe Biden is looking to understand where his base is. The fact that Adam Schiff came out against Biden saying he should step down is way more important than Clooney. The fact that Nancy Pelosi came out and said, we better look at these polls. We may have a problem, Houston. The fact that President Obama came out and said, we may need to look at the polls. It's hard for people to give up their mantle. It's hard to give up the power. It's hard to keep your eye on the forest when you're so busy being a tree. I get it. The Democratic National Convention, the DNC, will be in Chicago, the Midwest. I love it. How happy is Milwaukee that today is Friday? The DNC will happen between August 19th and August 22nd. That means that we've got 1 month from today. An open convention is a big mistake. The Democrats need to decide who will be their candidate. And they've got to start running. Not away, but toward the election against Trump and Vance. They've got to get the word out just like Trump and Vance do. Where do you stand on immigration? What do you believe? Get through the lies because both sides tell them. Fact check before you have an opinion. Don't go on Twitter saying something when you don't know anything about it. Don't look at someone's Instagram post and pretend that you know that OBJ got 20 million from Nike. He didn't get a penny. The lack of people with information should be scary to you. Don't be that person. Come to Nothing Personal. Get your information from me. Get it from everybody else, and then make smart decisions. We got a big couple months in front of us, and we'll be with you the whole time. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe. It's just business. This is Nothing Personal.